And we are live. Welcome to Olivia's stories, ladies and gentlemen.
Good day. I don't know if I'll be able to string these words together. My head is a mess at the moment and I don't know how to act. I'm writing this now to see if I can get it off my mind. My pregnant wife has been lying to me for a while now, and I just found out that not only is she lying, she's cheating too. I, 37 male, have been married to my wife, 35-year-old female, for about 7 years now. We have no children, although she's pregnant as I'm writing this. A few months back, I started noticing some changes in my wife's behaviors. She was always a shy, quiet, and all-in-all introverted lady, and that was one of the reasons why I first fell in love with her. We used to cuddle for long hours, without saying a single word to each other, and for someone who's working. Life is very stressful, that was all I needed. But as I said, I started to notice her change. At first I thought it's good that she's starting to come out of her shell, took her 35 years, lol. She started going out more with friends, and she also started staying out long. Before then, my words were a commandment to her. She never went anywhere without my permission. She never did anything too without my permission. Luckily for me, my wife and I cloned each other's WhatsApp account on our phones. I had hers on mine and she also had mine on hers. We did this close to 12 years ago, 6 months after we started dating. It was something of an inside joke born out of seeing the sheer amount of people on the internet who had either been cheated on or duped out of a fortune by the SO. I hardly ever checked it because I trusted her, and she, before now, had never given me any reason not to trust her. But hey, here we are now. When I opened her WhatsApp on my phone, I saw different conversations from men and women that I have never known in my life. Many of those messages were inconsistent, as though she was deleting them. I started to get a little bit suspicious of what was going on. My wife worked for a friend of ours at a gym, so I just shrugged the weird feeling off. Maybe they now have new customers, I thought. Hey everyone. Unfortunately, basically everyone who is watching these videos isn't subscribed. It would mean the world to me to quickly get out of the full screen video for 3 seconds and press that subscribe button. It's free and you can unsubscribe anytime. Sorry for bothering and thank you so much if you subscribed. Even though I chose not to think too much about what I saw, I decided to turn on notifications for her messages. Let me see what it is she's deleting before she deletes them. One night, while my wife and I were cuddled up in bed, she got a text on her phone. She checked it, smiled, and headed for the bathroom. Hey, what's that? I asked. Nothing, it's just Haley. Haley was a longtime friend of hers. At first, I went back to bed since it's just Haley, why should I care about their conversation? I wanted to go back to sleep, but I couldn't. I have insomnia. So after staying awake for some time, I decided to just check my phone for a minute. As I was scrolling through TikTok, laughing at memes, I got a notification from my wife's WhatsApp account. It was from a contact saved under my husband. I was wowed. I figured she had saved the number, cause I wouldn't bother checking my messages. Now that I think of it, that was really clever of her. I opened the message. Holy shit. My jaw dropped for what felt like a minute. I scratched my eyes and pinched myself, hoping this was a dream. It wasn't. What did I see? A long history of back and forth messaging from my wife and this random guy, ranging from sharing nudes to talking about how they longed for one another, and sadly, some messages dissed me. How could she? What even annoyed me the most was the fact that whilst I read the chat, more messages were popping up. What do you have on? He sent her, to which she responded saying, just a robe, do you want me to take it off for you? He sent a yes, and after some seconds, she sent him a video of her, touching herself, fully nude, right under my nose. She was doing this right under my nose. I swear I almost cried. It took the will of 1,000 Smiths for me to close that clone app. Minutes later, she got out of the bathroom, got dressed, and headed out. I wanted to follow her, trail her, see who she was cheating on me with, and deal with the both of them. I opted not to, because I knew that with how mad, heartbroken, and pissed off I was, I might have hit Ctrl Z on both their lives. I couldn't sleep that day. I went to the very top of the chat and started reading. From when he first slid into her DMs, she was mad at him for disrespecting me to my face, then mad at me for not doing anything about it. I was confused. I'm normally not one to take disrespect from anyone. As I read on, I found out who it was she was cheating on me with, and if you're guessing Haley's boyfriend, you're 100% accurate. This meth, I thought. I helped him get on Haley's good graces 5 years ago, and this is how he repays me? By screwing my wife? Then it hit me. My wife's pregnancy. Is the baby even mine? Wow. I was grateful to God when we got the news, but now I'm hoping that somehow the kid isn't mine. 'Cause now I decided I was going to leave. I don't really think I need advice here. Maybe if I go back and forth with someone in the comments, I can slowly move on from this. Also, I'm hoping that anyone who sees this and is going through something similar, I'm hoping you find happiness again. Anyway, I went to my lawyer house the next day, being Saturday. See, my lawyer was a childhood friend of mine, and he never seemed to like the woman I gave my surname to. We had discussed the situation. I let him have his "I told you so" rants for a few minutes. Then we went down to business. I need a divorce, and I need it yesterday, I told him. I brought him all the documents and asked him to prepare the divorce papers for me, quickly. You're lucky she made you sign the prenup, he said. I guess I was lucky. With the amount of money you have now and that which she earns now, you would have had to pay her off a couple $100,000. Oh my God. I couldn't think straight. I almost fell to my knees in thanksgiving. I thanked God I signed the prenup because, to be fair, I didn't even want to. To give you a rundown, when we were getting married, I was still doing odd jobs while managing my startup company. So I was earning a little above minimum wage while she was making roughly $70K annually. She cited the fact that her company had her in line for management and yada yada yada, so she made me sign the prenup. Well, fortunately and unfortunately for her, when the coronavirus came, her company was one of them that got swept off by the 1.5-year-long lockdown. It got so bad that towards the end, they couldn't even pay their workers. They owed a lot of money, and she ended up getting let go. On the other hand, the lockdown brought good tidings my way. My startup started to make some money, and I was able to retire from working altogether, as by the time the lockdown got to 10 months, I was already making close to $20K monthly whether I came into the company or not. So, back to the issue on ground. My wife angers me to even call her that now, so I'll call her by the devil's spawn name she was given. After talking about what to do with Lucy for a while, I decided that I was going to stack evidence up. I was going to print out screenshots of both their infidelity. I was going to get videos too. I was going to send it to her parents and to the church. She was a minister at our church, and if the kid isn't mine, I was going to leave. I and my lawyer friend, Davis, went to the bar to help me cool down. He suggested he helped me bag a shawty to hook up with for the night, which I declined. Hooking up with randoms is what got me into this mess. At the end of the day, I was too drunk to drive, so Dave dropped me off at home. As I sat there, drunk, thinking of how my life, which I had planned to be perfect, had now gone up in flames, I was so distraught. At some point, my hours of thinking, I didn't even know when I brought out a rope, hung it up and sat there looking at it for a while. Looking back at it now, that was the most cowardly thing to do, but then I was ready to bid this shitty life going. I went for a run. When I came back, my wife sat in the parlor crying. I hadn't put back the rope and she had seen it there. She ran to hug me as she saw me walk in, saying how she never knew I was going through something, how I never said a word about my pain to her, how she couldn't believe I would try to take my own life and leave her alone with the kid. I was disgusted by her words. The mere sight of the woman I had loved for over 10 years now started to make my stomach turn. She tried to kiss me, saying everything would be all right. I bowed my head. She thought it was 'cause I was still depressed or whatever. At that moment, I looked her in the eyes and asked her, "Is there anything you want to tell me?" She froze, looking at me like she was trying to read my mind. I repeated the question, "Is there anything you want to tell me?" Could you believe this devil's child tried to gaslight me? Me? How dare she try to play the mind games? "What do you mean?" she asked. "Are you crazy? I'm here crying my eyes out about you wanted to unalive yourself and you have the guts to ask me, 'Is there anything you want to tell me? Is this some sort of a joke?'" she added. After a lot of shouting and arguing, I was even surprised that I didn't let slip that I knew she was cheating. She went up to the bedroom and I starred in the parlor for a while. I have had it up to my neck, so I decided to pour it out here before I try again and succeed this time. Update. Thank you guys for reaching out to me. I plan to update you all, but I came out of retirement like Lionel Messi, LOL. I took the advice of some of you who said I should seek therapy. I was never really a fan of it, but I must say it has helped me a lot in this trying time. I've also started hitting the gym, as is normal in these situations. I'm glad I shared my story because I never really knew what I would have done if I didn't. After that long argument where I left off, we didn't talk for weeks, which was fine by me as I didn't want to see her face anymore. I kept on taking screenshots and piling them up. Also, I put up hidden cameras in the house. Lucy owned the place. I wanted to believe that she didn't bring him over to the house and that they didn't do anything on the bed we shared. Well, let's just say I was stupid for thinking they wouldn't. After one more month, I had loads of evidence. I created a website which I posted all the videos I gathered, from videos of him to videos of hers, to videos of both of them. If you had seen me working on that website, you'd have thought I was creating a porn site. Well, 3 months later, Lucy was in labor. I had drafted all the necessary documents and had filed for a divorce. Her labor was on the day of her cheating partner's anniversary with Haley. Coincidence? I think not. I went over to their place with a copy of the documents and records of the affair. I knocked on the door and was greeted by Haley's. I handed the documents to her and say to her, "Your husband and my soon-to-be ex-wife are screwing each other." Within seconds, her husband came out, unclad but for a towel wrapped around his waist. I guess he didn't hear me at the door. From the look on both our faces, he knew what was going on. "Honey, I can explain, he said. Why do they always think they can explain? In a fit of rage, since I was days away from being free, I rushed at him, swinging. I even thought he would be able to put up a fight, but he wasn't. Such a pathetic, weak man. He was in his early 40s. As he laid on the ground, passed out like a fat man after one round of intimacy. I stood over him, wondering what would make Lucy cheat on me with this peon. As I left, I pulled his hair, taking a few with me. Now to find out if I'll be paying child support or not, I went back to the hospital, the nurses wondering why I had left and why I was walking in blood-fisted and with hair in my hand. I walked straight to one of the midwives, handed her the hair and said, "Take this. Immediately that child is born, run a DNA test with this hair and with my blood sample. Also, if the child is not mine, be sure my name isn't on the birth certificate." I went out again, to the church this time. Luckily, the pastor was on seat. I handed him another copy of the documents. I didn't even have time to see the look on his face. I placed calls, telling my Staub ex-wife's family that I have an important announcement and I want to meet all of them at their father's house. When I got there, they were all waiting for me. I started handing out more copies, from mom to dad to brother to sister. Everyone got copies. I made to leave, then turned to them. "She's in labor, may be mine, may not be mine." Then I made to leave again. Her younger sister, who weirdly also got cheated on, ran to hug me. She was crying. Her brother shook my hands and said, "Do what you have to do, man. She f***ed up. Feed her to the streets." Her dad walked towards me. A tear in his eyes, he stood in front of me for a while, both of us eyeballing each other. Then he spoke. "You've been the best partner any of my children has had, and you've been my favorite in-law. I know you're going to split from her, and frankly, I'm not asking you guys to stay together. I just want you to know, I didn't raise her this way." He hugged me, and for the first time in this whole ordeal, I cried. I headed home, called Davies, and set up the final phase, the big reveal. I had decorated the whole house with balloons and baby stuff, and hung a big sign on the wall which read, "I know what you did." I went back to the hospital. I had already missed the birth of the child, and this woman who doesn't know we are soon getting separated had the audacity to frown. She wanted to argue with me for missing the childbirth, but she needed her rest. I asked to see the child. The nurse looked at me. She had a sad look on her face. I knew what she meant. The child wasn't mine. I had mixed feelings about it. Happy that I don't have anything that would make me have to see this woman again, and sad that I didn't have a child. I went outside and made more phone calls. I called everyone to come to the house that we were celebrating the birthday of the child. Lots of other people in the neighborhood who knew her and us. I really wanted to crush this woman's whole life. Hours later, the doctor let us leave. I thanked the nurse for not putting my name on the BC and left. She tried to argue with me on the way home, but I stayed quiet. I had her right where I wanted her. On getting home, we were greeted by everyone. I was happy. Everyone was here. Her childhood friends, her work colleagues at her new job as a secretary, some well-wishers from the church. Yes, this was the first time I was happy in a while. I was ready to drink her tears. Davis was inside. I had him turn on the 102's plasma TV in the room and had it displaying the videos of her infidelity. We walked in. Her eyes first went to the big sign on the wall. Then everyone walked in ready for a party of some sorts. Psych. I must admit, ruining her life was probably what made me finally find peace. I had washed her dirty laundry in the open lol. She fainted. I waited for her to awake, then handed her the divorce papers. Davis said to her, "You see, the only good thing about this is you made him sign a prenup thinking he'd want your money. Now you're broke and you're not going to get any divorce settlements." She tried to plead, to hold me in her arms and cry and beg. I laughed and looked at her, then I said, "Remember that day when you found the rope? That day I wanted to end my own life? It was because of you. I gave you a chance to come clean to me, but you decided to pee all over my grave. I was as good as dead then, and you laughed in my face, you mocked me. Well, it's payback time." I looked her in the eyes and said, "I'm done. We're done." Then I reached for my pocket, pulled out my phone, blocked and deleted her number right there and then, in front of her and everybody. She was still crying, snort and mucus coming out of her nose and mouth. She looked at me and said, "Babe, stop. Think about our child. I love you. Don't leave me. Please." I laughed TBH. She didn't know I already tested the kid. I reached again for my pocket, pulling out the DNA results. I placed it on the table, and in true Michael Jackson fashion, I said, "But the kid is not my son," as I moonwalked out of the crowd. 2 weeks later, the divorce was final. Very quick, very smooth. I paid nothing, shared nothing, as we didn't even have a joint account. I was free. I saw her only at the depositions. She was a shadow of herself. She wore my clothes to the both of them. It was funny, I swear. Looking at this woman who I loved for 10 years, this woman who, 8 months ago, I would have given my life for without questions, I felt nada. Nada. I won't be updating any further, as I think I have done the story justice. As for how my life is now, I'm just alive in the moment. Davis and I go out once a week to pick up some ladies to hook up with. I've become very fit from the months of living in the gym lol. So I've become a real ladies' man. As for my ex-wife, I've not heard from her in 3 months. I heard her mum died a few days after I visited. Something, heart failure, I didn't check up. I've continued my therapy, with my therapist very disappointed by my scorched earth revenge. Thank you for reading and responding. I'll take all your judgments and criticism, praise and support in. But hey, as I said, this is goodbye.
Hey, Reddit, Jack here, navigating life post-divorce at 35. Recently inherited a fortune from my dad. The catch? My ex-wife, Sarah, 35, and I were in the midst of our divorce when this windfall happened. Our 4-year marriage crumbled under financial strain, and she left because I couldn't provide. Now, I'm wrestling with newfound wealth and old wounds. To be truthful, my divorce isn't final yet, and my soon-to-be ex-wife is now begging to be back in my life. She had kicked me out of the house she bought years ago, and she sent me divorce papers a few days later. To the details now, I am the only child of my parents. It's been a funny existence, to be fair. I'm Indian. My parents moved over here, France, before they had me. My dad was, to be honest, I don't even know what he was. All I know is that he was a good father. He was home all the time, didn't go to work, and so did my mum. I always wondered how he was even able to afford what was just a simple existence. When I got older and started to understand how money worked, I occasionally asked him what he did, which meant he was always home. I wanted to know because I wanted to do the same also. I went to government schools from nursery all the way to university, this due to money issues. By money issues, I mean the lack thereof, or so I thought. I had a friend, Sarah, you can already see where this is going. She and I were the only Indians in our school, which didn't mean anything apart from the fact that she and I felt safe in our company. We did everything together as kids, and grew up together. Both of our parents knew each other, and I even heard once or twice that both our fathers worked together. They always encouraged us to have fun, play and do things together, school and otherwise. I remember when things changed, when I was 19. My mother and I went to Bangladesh to visit her parents. We spent 2 months there. It was the best of all the holidays we had gone on in my life. I was happy to be in and around the culture, to go to ceremonies, to see how they said prayers there and especially to see my grandparents. While I was there, I one day overheard my parents talk about an arranged marriage of some sorts.
Hey everyone. Unfortunately, basically everyone who is watching these videos isn't subscribed. It would mean the world to me to quickly get out of the full screen video for 3 seconds and press that subscribe button. It's free and you can unsubscribe anytime. Sorry for bothering and thank you so much if you subscribed.
I wasn't clear on the details because I was just walking past when I heard it and I didn't stay to listen. I just continued with my life. So, after the months we spent there, I came home. Sarah had changed. Some of you already know where this is going, but for those who didn't, here's a little rundown. She was always beautiful, something I already knew. For I went to India, she was short, probably 4'11", 5 foot or 5 feet 1 inch. When I came back, she had grown into a stallion. I always had a thing for taller ladies, and I'm pretty tall myself, standing at 5 feet 10 inches. Other things I didn't notice about her started to become more noticeable. She was there when I came home. She and my dad welcomed us home. She brought croissants and a fruit basket with her. She had dressed real nice, like it was an event of some sorts. I won't lie to you, she looked mesmerizing. Like She gave me a passionate hug that lasted a while. We went out that day, anywhere to, as she said. I can't remember where we went that day, some of those places have even closed right now. A few days later, we went to Paris together. We had both decided to take a year off, before going to university. The year off had come to an end and we decided to check out the university we had both applied to and gotten accepted. Paris Sciences et Letters, the PSL Research University, Paris. We had a swell time there. She booked a hotel for both of us. We went to a party that night, stayed till 1 a.m. Then, we went to a nearby restaurant as the only reason we left the party was because Sarah was wasted and hungry. We bought a few things, she paid and we headed for the hotel we booked. When we got to the hotel, she got undressed in front of me.
Yeah.
Cue massive young boy penile panic. She put on a nightgown and joined me in bed. We had a long drunken conversation, laughed and played board games together. I must admit that when she became more than just a friend to me, I remember wanting to kiss her that day. I couldn't, because she was drunk and it would seem like I was taking advantage of her. Sarah and I waxed stronger as a pair. A few months into uni, I told about my newfound feelings for her and we started dating. We were in the same department and because both our families were close, we were allowed to rent a place off campus together. We were inseparable. Sarah was a bit of a materialistic girl. What do I mean a little bit? She is very materialistic. She also was an only child and her father, unlike mine, flaunted his wealth. To be honest, I'm still trying to figure out what it was they did. She had everything she wanted, her own car at 17, Mercedes-Benz. They had set up a trust fund for her, she had a platinum card and she lavished money at any given chance. Throughout our stay in uni, she paid for the house we lived in. Now, tell me why 2 students who didn't make any money for themselves would live in a 3-bedroom apartment that had a pool? I sometimes told her she didn't need to spend as much as she did. That we would still survive perfectly if we stayed in a self-contained apartment, if we cooked most of the food we ate, instead of ordering takeout every day. She never listened anyway, her dad funded her lifestyle and she was already spoiled. That was the only downside of being with her. I didn't have money, nor did I have wealthy parents, so I thought, and I didn't like accepting money from strangers, something my parents taught me against. After school, we were both 23, I applied for a job as an assistant lecturer in the university which I schooled at. Sarah refused to get a job, stating that her mother was a housewife so she would too. I accepted that fact as I thought it was only fair that I provided for my family, just like my father did. Mind you, we weren't married yet. Fast forward 8 years later, I had become a respectable lecturer in the university. I decided it was time for Sarah and I to get married. We were already dating for 12 years at this point. She was happy to tie the knot with me, and her happiness and mine were the only thing I wanted. We had both agreed that, like our parents, we were going to have just one child, and we planned to stay without kids for a while before having children. Having one child was my idea and the waiting till later was hers. We were very compatible and everyone around us saw that. One problem though, a year after we got married, Sarah's father stopped funding her extravagant lifestyle. His words were, "You're now married, so your husband should now cover your expenses. Learn to live by your husband's means." That was good advice he gave her there, and I wish she had heeded it. Of course she didn't, for you can't unspoil a spoiled fruit. It didn't take long for her to start getting frustrated with my situation. My father and hers had tried to lure me into their business, which I didn't join cause it sounded shady. Maybe that was why her father cut her off. She started nagging me, she started denying me time with her, and sometimes we didn't even talk for weeks. It was annoying. How could something so sweet go sour so quick? She even vowed to make my life a living hell. She fulfilled her promise, trust me. I started to hate going home. The lecturer's salary I earned wasn't much, but to me it was an honest living. It was enough to more than take care of both of us, and even enough to add a child's expenses. But nope, no way. She wanted me to earn $500,000 or more a year so she could have enough money to buy a Maybach every other day. She wanted Chanel purses and Louis Vuitton bags, one of which cost more than I earned in a month. It didn't take long for her to decide she's had enough. At the 3-year mark, as I planned our 3rd anniversary, she changed the locks on the house. It was a big house, one she bought on a whim because she had the money in her trust fund. I swear she really knew how to make a man cry. She kicked me out of the house. The very next day, as I walked into my office in school, there it was, divorce papers. I sat there, deep in thoughts. I didn't know what to say or do. I didn't know how to feel or how to try and fix it. I went home to my dad's. I didn't show up at work for days. I was thinking about how I lost my best friend, my lover, and my woman. I stayed home for a while as I tried so hard to get my life together. I started going to the gym. I decided I wasn't going to just let it go easy, cause she wanted a percentage of what I had earned. She cited the fact that we had been together for close to 16 years should count for something, the fact that because of me she didn't work for those long years, which was a lie. I had to go to court. My parents opted to stay out of our little disagreement, as they thought we would settle our dispute. While I was home, my father tried again and again to make me join in his business. He respected the fact that I wanted to teach but wanted me to have a good life. He claimed that working with him would give me just that. I didn't want to join him because I had a bad feeling about it, and also, I felt that staying home all day would definitely not be good for my mental health. At some point my father stopped asking. Just 5 months ago, my father died from what seemed like a heart attack. He was buried days later, as was a part of our culture. His lawyer met me at the burial and told me that his dad had a plan and in a few months he would read me his will. When I got home, I thought about what would be in the will. The house may be a few $1,000s, say $200,000 max. Well. I was wrong as fuck. I saw Sarah at the burial. She looked beautiful. She waved at me and later on came to give her condolences. She then went on to talk about the divorce, saying that due to the loss she would ease up the divorce case. She did as she said though, a real woman of her words, that lady. She rewrote the divorce clauses and I signed them. Then I was told that the divorce would be settled in 4 months. Just last month, Sarah called me. She went on a full rant crying profusely as she told me that her father had been arrested. She didn't know why, but that she needed comforting. I was tempted to go see her, but as I put my clothes on and headed over, I was met at my door by my mom and our family lawyer. He had come with the will which he said he'd be bringing. It was a video message and then a bunch of documents that I needed to sign. In the video message, my father explained how he was happy that I didn't cave and joined him in his business. He spent a few hours explaining what his business was all about. It's something I can't go into because of how incredibly illegal it was. He then said that he knew he was dying and he opted not to die quietly. He decided he was going to out the whole enterprise. After that, he went into talking about his assets. I was wowed. He had millions and he lived life as though he didn't even had anything. He drove a Honda Civic. I laughed, to be honest. He gave the lawyer 1.3 million euros for being loyal. Imagine that. He said he had opened a trust fund for myself, which contained over 10 million euros. He had bought himself an island worth 104 million pounds, the island which now belongs to me. Then he left my mom, according to him, whatever is left after the police is done with them. I signed the documents and got the cards and pins and whatnot. This shit is real, I said to myself. In just an hour, I had gone from having just 12,000 euros in my account to not needing to work a day in my life ever again. Just moments later, my soon-to-be ex-wife called me again, saying that I promised to come and I haven't, so I went over. We spoke at length about how the year has been on her. She complained about not always having money, how her father had slowly started to lose money, how her family house was visited by the police frequently. She said she was going to sell the house and move into something smaller. In the conversation, I let it slip that my dad had left me a huge sum as an inheritance. Her jaw dropped at the realization. Just as we were in our final stage of the divorce, I now have more than enough money to take care of her over-the-top needs. Well, as the title suggests, I started to see a change in her behavior. She started to actively try to slow down the divorce process and started to try to win me back. It wasn't working. I only entertained her bullshit because I feared she could have enough of a claim to my inheritance. She started to come over to my house frequently, started to wear revealing outfits and trying to seduce me. In my head, I know what it's all about. She's figured out that I have money and now she's throwing herself at me. Very gold-diggerish of her. Now this is where I need your help, guys. What would you do if you were in my shoes? Obviously, I'm not taking her back, but should I stop seeing her? What do I do honestly? Update. This chapter of my life, Reddit, is an odyssey of healing and self-discovery. Inheritance became a double-edged sword, cutting through the remnants of a broken marriage while unveiling the resilience of the human spirit. As I move forward, I carry with me the lessons learned from a marriage that crumbled and a heart that learned to mend. I appreciate the help and the kind words. I felt I had to update you guys on how things are right now. The initial post was 3 months ago, and a lot of things have come to light since then. My divorce has been finalized, which is one, so I don't have to see or speak to Sarah except I decide on my own to do so. Secondly, Sarah's father has had his assets and accounts frozen and seized from him. Everything he and my father illegally obtained over the last 40 years were stripped off him. I started to wonder how they didn't even get to me. This was something quite interesting. After they took what they took off my mom, she still had over 787,000 euros, which she decided she would move home to India with. She left just last week. Now on to my wife, or better suiting, ex-wife. When they were done with her family, there was nothing left, just the house they lived in, a few thousand in the bank and the money in her trust fund. Money which she had blown up. Her mother and her fought for weeks. She called me and cried after one of said fights. She cried as she told me she made a mistake, how she should have listened to her father when he told her to be contemptuous with what I could offer, how she should have listened to me when I said she should cool it with the lavish lifestyle. She cried and I listened without saying a word. When she was done, I just put down the phone. I'm planning on moving away from the country before I get found out or anything. I met the lawyer and we talked about the situation on the ground. He assured me that my father had planned for this, and that the inheritance won't be taken away. I have decided I will leave on the 15th of next month. I would retire to the island I got as part of my inheritance. I would hire a few workers, farmers, cleaners, and whatnot. I plan to live in isolation. The simplicity my dad taught me has been well received, and I would pass it on should I get a chance to. I might update this again and I might not. All I need from you guys now is your well wishes. Hope no French police officers are seeing this. I'll be selling the family house as I said. As for Sarah, she now works at a small startup company. I hope for her sake she's learned her lessons. I might see her one last time before I leave. I wish her the best in her endeavors, but a part of me is hoping she gets treated badly in her next relationship. Hope I'm not evil for wishing so? Well, Reddit. That's my life, all written out for you. I hope this doesn't end up on YT. Hello guys. This is pretty much the saddest reality that I've had to face. Not gonna lie, I've been on this platform reading stories of people getting cheated on by their partners. I never knew I'd one day be here writing mine. Life has really gone full circle. I booked a trip for friends and family, and my wife decided that was her cue to sleep with my best friend. I, a 53-year-old male, am now trying to find a way to process the bullshit I was forced to experience. I don't know if there's a lesson in this, a lesson on trust or something. I don't know if I'd ever get over the pain, but I look forward to what the days ahead would bring. It's been 2 years now and my wife of 20 years, Riel 46, had spent the year before the incident asking to go on a trip abroad. I had turned it down because we currently have 2 sons in university. We were comfortable, I made sure of it. Having 2 children in uni, on the other hand, meant we didn't spend as much as we did earlier. I had constantly turned down the notion that we spent 2 weeks in a foreign land, because I thought it was only going to waste the money we had. Anyway, after giving it some thought and guided by the constant pleas and requests from my wife, I decided, why not? I started to plan a trip for the whole family. I thought my sons needed a break from the stress that came with being in university, and I felt a vacation would be perfect for all of us. I surfed the internet in search of someplace worthwhile, but I couldn't find one that's good and also fits my budget. We couldn't go to someplace in Africa because my sons each had about 3 allergies. I was always someone who wanted to visit Africa though, especially Nigeria. I just decided that the trip to Nigeria would be something I and my wife would do when I retired. Well, after searching for a while, I found the cheapest fun-packed vacation plan for a family. My wife liked to be treated like royalty, so I decided that I'd only go for the ones that were high class. The cheapest ones I found were worth close to double one of my son's annual tuition. I decided it was time to outsource this vacation. That was where my friend, the closest I've had and the one who's been around the longest, came in. He was a millionaire who had helped me out a ton over the years. He had once talked to me about going overseas on holiday, for the same duration as I had. I seized an opportunity to squeeze one more freebie out of him. I discussed my plans with him, showing him the choices I had and the money I had budgeted for the trip. He looked at them, smiled and said, "These aren't vacations, bro, let me show you what a vacation is." He opened his laptop, and what I saw wowed me. The locations, the way the pictures looked spectacular, and how everything I saw looked like they were expensive enough to clear my mortgage. Are you sure this wouldn't be one of those, what you ordered versus what you got things? He smiled. He told me how he has been going on these trips at least once a year. He said he reacted the way I did when he first made his millions. He then diverted the conversation into something that didn't relate whatsoever to what we were talking about at hand. John was a bit of an innovative-minded person, although he always used his big brain to run Ponzi schemes and scams. That was how he made his millions. He never got married, at least not yet, as he said he didn't want to settle down to one woman when he could get whatever woman he wanted. He had a son, 12, who he paid child support for. I sometimes wondered why he lived such a lifestyle, and sometimes I envied life. I mean, who wouldn't want to have millions in their name? Who wouldn't want to travel on $300,000 worth of vacation once a year without having to break every piggy bank they owned? Who wouldn't want to live in a $1.4 million worth mansion? He asked me to wire him the budget I had. I did, and I watched him use the money to book a 1-hour goat yoga session for 6. Yeah, you fucking heard me right, he spent my entire budget for a 2-week holiday on a 1-hour session. This motherfucker always found a way to make my hard-earned money look like peanuts. He booked the trip for 6, my wife, my 2 sons, his son, himself and I. He also booked the plane tickets to and fro cause my budget also included flights. I thanked him afterwards and just left. The day of the trip came and we all moved. My wife was most excited amongst all of us. She was happy she finally got to go on what she'd been asking for about a year. She was so excited about the trip that she couldn't even sleep that night. I had to find other ways to put her to sleep, wink wink. When we got to Paris, John took the opportunity to dazzle the mini crowd with his abilities. He knew how to speak French and also knew how to fake an accent. His little antiques excited his son and also my wife for reasons I didn't quite understand. I just shrugged it off to the fact that she was so excited for being on a trip after she had been longing for one. You got to the hotel we booked and it was marvelous. I should say he booked. It had wonderful scenery and it was literally the biggest hotel in Paris and also the most expensive. We spent a lot on this location. John said he did it because he wanted to show me how happy he was to have a friend like me. He sometimes used to tell me that sometimes, due to how squeaky clean I was as a citizen, people tend to trust doing business with him more. He said something about a few of his clients doing background checks on me one day, which really freaked me out. The hotel had a large house-type suite in the penthouse, had like 4 or 5 rooms, and had bathrooms in all of them. It also had a recreational lounge and a pool at the balcony. It had games, which interested John's son, who got immediately preoccupied by one. It had a pool table and an in-house gym. I'm really going to get jacked here, I heard my sons say to one another whilst they admired the size of the gym and the quality of the tools. My wife immediately went into one of the rooms and into the bathtub. I joined her in there in a few minutes. I must say, I used to read manhwas that had sex in the bathtub as part of it. Trust me, the bigger and better the tub, the better the *X. Very next day we went about our different itineraries. Although we did sometimes do something together, the itineraries we had together included or not exclusive to karaoke, play snooker together, the already scheduled goat yoga, and some other things that I don't actually know how to pronounce because the French. It was around 7 p.m. John sent his kid to go to sleep whilst the adult continued to have fun. My sons were 21 and 18 respectively, so since we were in Europe, we let them drink and join us when we went into the nearby club. We had fun as a bunch of adults and I, for one, was glad I didn't have to do any parenting. The next day we were all hungover, except for John, which I guess was because he did this sort of thing anyway, so he had built up an immunity. He prepared hangover cures, French style, and I just watched as my wife was laughing at all his jokes, even the ones I thought weren't funny. The next day we went into the city of Paris. It was something of a sightseeing tour. We went to all of the tourist attractions we could go to that day, about 4 that day. When we got back, we were all very exhausted, again except for John. We sat in the living room in the penthouse and recounted our day. We talked about how fun it was and how it was good that we decided to save the visit to the Eiffel Tower for last as in the day before we were scheduled to return to the US. John continued being the comedian, with his funny getting more and more repeated and unfunny. I just wondered one thing though, why does my wife seem to be laughing at every one of his jokes and asking him to repeat them and all that? I looked across the room, to be sure I wasn't the only one not laughing. Alas, it was the other way round, my wife was the only one laughing. When I locked eyes with my sons, it showed that they too wondered what was funny. We all started to retire to our sleeping spaces, starting with John's kid. I can't lie, I keep calling him John's kid because I have completely forgotten the boy's name. My 2 sons followed, then myself. I beckoned my woman to join me to bed, but she insisted I wanted to stay awake a little while longer. At midnight that day, I woke up to ease myself. My wife was sleeping right beside me, but what I found weird was the nightwear she had on. It wasn't from our pile, and it also wasn't the same as the ones in the room we slept in. The nightwear in each room had different colors. I hadn't been in all the rooms, so I didn't know which it was from. The next day I had woken up earlier than I did on the days prior. I had something in me I had nicknamed the need to know basics. Need to know as in I need to know the answers to my questions. I never liked leaving any situation without a remedy. I got into the other rooms one after the other cause I couldn't rest if I didn't know which room the nightwear she had on was from. On getting to the 4th room, I saw one of the cleaners walking out with the night clothes from each of the rooms. It seems he had come in thinking no one was in because in 3 days prior to this day, we were always already out. I counted the piles on his hand to see if he had done all the other rooms, which I hadn't entered. He had. I tried to see if I could determine, from how the piles were stacked, what room he had gotten what set from, but before I could even get to that, the cleaner stuck all in a bag, as understandably, they might have been too heavy for him to keep carrying. I went back to the sitting room, put on the 100 inches TV, and sat to enjoy a movie. Maybe that would take the thought away from my head. My wife came in, behind the cleaner. One could tell that she had just awoken. She was having one of the nightmares we brought with us this time. She came closer and kissed me, saying, "Good morning, my husband." I laughed and replied, "Good morning, your husband's wife." The cleaner looked at me. He had some sort of pity in his eyes. I couldn't understand why he would look at me pitifully. I started to think maybe because this was a different place, with a different culture, that maybe that was how they showed jealousy or envy here. Maybe he wanted what we had. I swear I'm FING stupid. Looking back at that day and recalling the look on that man's face, I am now heavily disappointed at the level of stupidity which I attained that day. I now even wonder how I managed to have 2 sons who are flipping Einsteins at their fields. The days went on. Each day we'd go out and have a blast, all expenses covered by John, and every day we'd come back and I'd sit through another round of enthusiastic show from my wife to my best friend. At some point it started to seem even insulting. Well, the last day came, Eiffel Tower Day. I and John had helped my sons get in bed with twin European ladies the night before, and that was what we were talking about for the most part of the tour. The 18-year-old was just losing his virginity. Don't ask me why he lost it that late, I don't know, and was happy as F***K about it. He could stop talking about how he was tired of doing just second base stuff with his girlfriend at school. I didn't know he had a girlfriend, otherwise I wouldn't have helped him get with one of the twins. The 22-year-old, he just got out of a 4-year relationship. Well, he didn't just get out, it's been a year since they broke up and I was trying to get him back in the game. My wife seemed a little disturbed. Initially I thought it was because of the discussion we were having, so I changed the topic. We continued our tour. My wife kept behaving weird and I kept wondering why. I had asked her if anything was wrong, but she kept on saying no. Minutes later, she told me she wanted to leave, that wasn't feeling good, that her tummy hurt and that she was tired from walking. I told the rest that we were going to wrap it up and head home for the day, but she insisted that she didn't want to spoil the fun for us. It took some convincing for me to decide to stay back and let her head back to the hotel alone, but I finally caved, called her an Uber and kissed her goodbye. There was a few seconds of awkward chatter before I got the boys hyped up again by suggesting we go to an arcade place. We got to the arcade and then the fun started. We played a few of those dancing games where you dance according to the arrows that come up on the screen. Then we played some laser tag. Not to brag, but I spent some time training to join the military, and although I ended up not joining the military, some of my residual skills remained. In this case, I was still a very good shot. We played capture the flag against another family there, a dad and his 4 sons, aged presumably between 22 and 10, I don't know. I brought the smoke. The little boy on the other side cried because of how bad we kept beating them. In the midst of it all, John got a text. I had seen from the reflection in his eyes that the text he got was an alluring photo. I gave him that nice look and shook his hand. We both laughed and then he walked out of the field. In my own Christian mind, I thought the booty call was from a girl he met at one of the parties we went to. We went back to the game we were playing with the other dad and his 4 sons, this time 1 man short. The handicap gave them a fighting chance. He had won all 3 rounds before John, but the 5 games after, we won 3 and lost the other 2. Right about now it had been 2 hours since John left and about 4 since Riel did. I felt bad for leaving her all alone when she obviously needed someone to take care of her. I recalled her intense fear of heights and the fact that she was only just starting to get used to being on high ground. I felt bad for leaving her all by herself even after neglecting her phobia for heights and making her climb the Eiffel Tower. I decided to leave my eldest in charge while I go take care of my woman. I gave them each 400 euros to spend, which was just above $500 then. I got to the hotel, swiped my keycard across the door and walked in. I saw the clothes my wife had worn earlier scattered on the floor. I had thought to myself, maybe she had diarrhea and took it off before she shat herself. I approached the room we shared, but something else caught my eyes. I saw 1 foot of John's pair of shoes close to the door, then just ahead of it was my wife's panties. My heart began racing. I ran the rest of the way in and pushed the door open. What the actual fuck? My keycard fell from my hand and I followed suit. I dropped to my knees. It was the sound I made when hitting the ground that drew their attention. The two were so carried away, they didn't even hear me walk in. I wanted to do something, shout, hit, something. I needed to do something, but I couldn't. I shouted the loudest F***K I had ever heard, and then I went numb. I couldn't hear anything, I couldn't feel my surroundings, and everything in front of me was a blur. I saw the two of them run towards me, but I didn't hear a word of what they said. I saw them touch me, but I felt no hands on me. It took a good minute for me to regain consciousness. I was still knelt where I was. My wife was saying words, and now they were audible. She was pleading for my forgiveness, saying how sorry she was. Saying how it was only a one-time thing, that she made a mistake, and how she'd spend the rest of her life trying to make it up to me. All those words went in one ear and out the other. As I knelt there, the one thing that came to my head was the look of pity on the cleaner's face that day, the look I had thought wasn't what it actually was. I know now why he pitied me. This woman was fucking my best friend. I got up and left. I didn't know where to, I just walked. I think I might have lost consciousness again, cause the next thing I remembered was it being nighttime and me still walking. I asked the nearest person how far I was from the hotel I stayed at. I was told it was almost 2 kilometers away. Did I just walk 1.2 miles? The next 3 months went in similar fashion. I'd be doing something and next thing, I've lost time, sometimes a few minutes, sometimes hours. I was forced into early retirement due to this. I almost burnt down my house and I had to stop driving, due to the possibility that I might lose it when behind the wheels. It took a while before I became normal again. I just got back behind the wheel a few weeks ago. As for the woman who did this to me, we're separated. Not divorced yet. She still tries to get us back together even though I told her there can never be an us anymore. We had something good before, but she decided to stick my best friend's D***K inside what we had. As for my best friend, I know some of you are thinking right now, why didn't he say ex-best friend? Well, even I don't know the answer to that question. I have told him if he ever got caught in his illegal deals, that I'd testify against him. He has made his peace with that. We don't talk anymore, although he keeps sending me wads of money in hope that it would help fix things. I keep the money, it's the salary they made me not get. I'd worked 20 years with that company and I still had another good 10 years in me. If not for that incident. I'm seeing a therapist, obviously, because that was the only reason I'm able to write this without going crazy again. I miss my old life and I wish I could have it again. Just without Riel. My eldest is getting married next year, to a young lady who I think is good for him. I hope she treats him better than his mom did me. I think my life will be better, there have been signs. Lord, whatever lessons this was supposed to teach me, I'd have preferred to learn them by handwritten notes. That will be all.